I'd like to welcome all of you to this lecture on ancient Jainism by Dr. Pawan Jain. As we always start with the Mangalacharan. Namo Aryantaram, Namo Siddhadam, Namo Airiyadam, Namo Uvachayadam, Namo Loe Sabbasahudam. Keso Panchanamukaro, Sabba Pava Papanasano, Mangaladam Chasabdesan, Padmapuri. Khame mi sabbe jive, sabbe jiva khamantu, mittive sabba bhuvesu, veram macham aki. Good evening, everyone. We are here to listen to a talk by a dear friend of mine, Dr. Pawan Jain. Let me tell you a little bit about ancient Jainism. Ancient Jainism is a not-for-profit inclusive platform dedicated to the intellectual and educational exploration of Jain heritage. Here, the rich tapestry of Jain visual arts, history, literature, and traditions are thoughtfully engaged through meaningful dialogue and scholarship. We curate virtual talks, film screenings, lectures, and interviews with scholars, researchers, and students who delve into the profound world of Jain thought and tradition. At Ancient Jainism, we honor the legacy of Jainism and strive to inspire awareness, appreciation, and active efforts towards the preservation of this timeless heritage. To get regular updates, please follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel, the link to which has been shared in the chat box. Today, we have the utmost honor and pleasure of hosting Dr. Pawan Jain. About Pawanji, Dr. Pawan Jain is a distinguished scholar of Indian art history and a textile entrepreneur. Her academic, her academic journey includes a PhD in the history of art with focus on Jain manuscripts, paintings, and textiles, as well as several notable publications such as Kaivalyam, Jain manuscript paintings in the National Museum, Chitram Vastram, textiles and sartorial styles in Jain manuscripts and paintings, and Sarasvati, a Jain perspective through art. She has curated exhibitions, including the acclaimed Chitram Vastram, and has lectured extensively on Indian art and aesthetics, Indian temple architecture, Jain art, etc., and served as visiting faculty at several institutions, including the National Museum Institute, New Delhi. About this session, Saraswati, the revered Indian goddess of wisdom and knowledge and arts, also appears as a distinctive deity in Jain tradition. Diverging from the usual Vedic and Puranic portrayals, the Jains show her as an embodiment of Jina-vani, the teachings of the Tirthankaras. This session will explore Saraswati's special presence in Jain art through iconography, paintings, sculptures, temple reliefs, and vastra-patas, enabling establishing her role as Shrutadevi, the custodian of sacred texts and intellectual pursuits. From ancient Mathura sculptures to tantric patas, this study offers insights into a unique aspect of religious syncretism and theological reinterpretation through artistic expression, revealing Jainism's deep engagement with a shared cultural deity. Without any further delay, I would like to now invite Dr. Jain to enlighten us through her presentation. Over to you, Dr. Jain. Jai
Jai,
Jinendra.
Jai Jinendra, everybody. And thank you, first of all, Manish Bhai, for such a generous introduction. And also Ancient Jainism, Saurabh and the team. I congratulate them for having organized this, and I'm deeply indebted to all the participants who are here to listen to this discourse. And as Manish Bhai said, without much ado, we are going to straight away get into the, yeah. So everybody can see my screen and can hear me loud and clear, I hope. Yeah? Okay. So Saraswati's vibrant journey through Jain art, that's what we are going to discuss today. The evolution of Saraswati as a goddess of wisdom, knowledge, and learning within Jainism offers an exceptional perspective on religious syncretism and theological perspective on religion, while Jainism fundamentally denies, the concept of a creator deity, but it incorporates a rich pantheon of auxiliary divinities, among whom Saraswati holds a very preeminent position. We shall delve into Saraswati's distinctive role with Jain tradition, juxtaposing her with the Vedic origins and her transformation within Hindu Puranic literature and her theological iconographic reinterpretation in Jainism. So the divine presence of Saraswati is richly, depicted in artistic traditions through sculptural representations found in stupas, rock-cut caves, temple architecture, and of course, her iconography also features prominently in the illuminated manuscript paintings, particularly those accompanying the Jain texts, as well as in the vastra-patas or the cloth pots employed in tantric practices and other ritualistic contexts. Okay, so let's see what was the Vedic origin of the deity here. So in the earliest Vedic corpus, Saraswati is celebrated primarily as a deified river, revered for her purifying and life-sustaining properties. The Rigvedic hymns extol what I have on your screen. You can see that. It tells about it explains her being the epitome of fertility, prosperity, and sanctity. At this stage, Saraswati's identity is deeply intertwined with her geographical and ecological significance. So in this mantra from Rigveda, the role of Saraswati is being further mentioned as the great waters that awakens through intellect and illumines universal understanding. Okay, so this is what it all started with. And what you're looking at on the screen is the Kailashnath temple from Ellora. And it's, of course, dedicated to Shiva. And this is a river shrine where all the three goddesses, Saraswati, Ganga, Yamuna, are there. And this is, of course, the detail of the river Saraswati. So here they are being venerated or worshipped for their purifying aspect, okay, or life-giving or fertility. Another significant figure that we have in the Rigvedic tradition is the Vak, the goddess of speech, revered for her mystical powers. So the Rigvedic hymn dedicated to Vak is also known as the Devi Suktam or the Vak Suktam, right? This is found in the 10th mandal of the Rigveda, specifically the hymn number 125, where Vak is depicted as a powerful, all-pervading divine feminine force governing other deities and also considered the source of creation, knowledge, and eloquence. Over time, Vak's attributes merged with Saraswati's, gradually shaping her identity as a deity of wisdom and eloquence. So this is a very, very, very pretty sculpture from the Hoysala period, which I shot at the Indian Museum in Kolkata, where Saraswati is depicted. And here you can see there is no veena in her hand as yet. Okay. Now, in contrast to this, let's see, in the Jain tradition, this I'm showing you 21st century two temples. Okay, one is, of course, from Delhi, from my neighborhood, and the other one is in UP here. And you can see, look at the arg here. This says Saraswati Mata ka arg, and this one says Jina-vani Mata ka arg. So in that sense, they are both, being used interchangeably. So in the Jain tradition, we often refer to Saraswati as a Shrutadevi or Sarsai in Prakrit. And it emerges as a pivotal figure embodying the sacred teachings of the Tirthankaras. Unlike her Vedic, antecedent, who retains vestiges of her naturalistic origins or say waters, Jain Saraswati is entirely divorced from any such association with a physical river. Instead, she personifies Jina-vani, the transcendental knowledge and sermons of the Tirthankar. This theological shift underscores the Jain emphasis on scriptural wisdom and oral tradition as as the very foundational to spiritual liberation. So, in fact, the Jain scriptures like the Vyakhya Pragyapti or Paumacharya or Mahanishita Sutra, etc., they describe Sarasvati as the custodian of canonical knowledge. And she is depicted as presiding over the 12 Angas and 14 Purva texts, the most venerated scriptures within Jainism. And here we see these two images where the scriptures are being venerated. Here we have the Shudskanda Yantra, which is very prevalent in the Digambar temples, and where all the scriptures are being depicted in this kind of a diagram. And here we have, and how are they venerated? By invoking Sarasvati here, and by here invoking Jina-vani, which means that, they are both the same. It's the preachings of the Jina and the Sarasvati. They are both being juxtaposed here in two temples, further emphasizing this aspect of Sarasvati. Now, I'm very proud to also say that the earliest Sarasvati sculpture that we have extant, it comes from the Jain tradition, and it is not from Vedic or Puranic tradition. Okay, and this, of course, traces back to the Kushan period around the 2nd century CE. Of course, it's a dated sculpture, the red mortal sandstone sculpture from Stupa at Kankali Tila near Mathura. Okay, so of course, it is now housed in Lucknow Museum, the State Museum at Lucknow. It also exemplifies her early iconographic form. Here, of course, she's portrayed in a Go-duhika asan, which means she's squatting in a squatting posture with knees spread wide apart, emphasizing the crescent of her drapery that kind of drapes over her left shoulder and extends down to her waist. She holds a manuscript in one hand, and some remnants of Akshmal also can be seen in her other hand, symbolizing her intellectual, meditative, and spiritual dimension, further distinguishing her from her Vedic and Puranic counterparts. In fact, the interesting thing is her name is inscribed on the pedestal. Here you can see the inscription in Brahmi script, which are there. The literary references regarding Saraswati's presence in Jainism are supported by these kind of archaeological evidences. With Mathura, in fact, it has yielded 3 significant Saraswati sculptures. This is, of course, the oldest one, which further goes to show the continuity of the tradition. And this sculpture is not only, important for its, early date, but also the stylistic idiom, which has kind of no parallel. Of course, we don't see the head here, the left breast and the shoulder are missing. The sculpture still preserves of an ancient, the tradition of an ancient sculptural art of India. And unlike later iconography, of course, the Hansa Vahan is also missing here. And the image is devoid of any kind of ornamentation here also, right? And the 2 attending figures on the side, you can see they definitely show some kind of Gandharan art influence here. The costumes here, they show Greco-Roman influence, because we all know the Kushanas ruled from Mathura as well as from the Gandhar region. Yeah. Okay. And then what happens during the Puranic period? So Saraswati was redefined in the Hindu Puranas. No longer just a river goddess, she became the deity of wisdom, learning, music. And also she was associated with Brahma as his consort or daughter, often depicted holding a veena and a manuscript, a lotus, seated on a swan, symbolizing knowledge and arts. So this is the shlok from Padma Puran Stotra, which translates as, I offer my obeisance to Saraswati, who is situated in the heart of all consciousness, etc., etc. She gives the wisdom and boons, and she bestows boons in the hands of a pure heart. So here her musical aspect is also very much evident here. So some Puranic texts like Skand Puran further integrated Shaivite influences also, portraying her with matted hair and a crescent moon akin to Shiva, and sometimes with a third eye also. So the evolution of Saraswati in the Puranic tradition was thus influenced by these socio-cultural exchanges, and particularly with Jain and Buddhist traditions. And over time, she acquired additional epithets like Sharda, Vageshwari, Bharti, further cementing her role as the goddess of wisdom. Okay. So here we have two sculptures from Hoysaleshwara temple, uh, showing her in many panels, including some where she holds musical instruments and probably ek tantri veena she's holding here. So there are three panels that show her dancing in a classical Indian dance posture. Unfortunately, all the panels are kind of damaged, but she's shown here with 8 hands, and she holds a musical instrument, a pen, a palm leaf manuscript, and tools of other arts as she dances. Okay. So these are from the Shiva temple in Halebidu. Then next, of course, we see by the 8th, 9th century, some Puranic influences began in affecting Jain texts also, as seen in the inscription from Achar Dinkar here, that you can see, revered, God is Brahmani. She's being addressed as Brahmani, who holds the veena, book, lotus, rosary, who rides a swan, and who's adorned in white. Okay. And please come and be present in this Shashti Puja, the worship of the sixth day. So even in its present state, the vast expanse of Jain literature is considered to be under the guardianship of Shrutadevi. So this period of interfaith interaction led to a blending of certain iconographic and theological aspects, though fundamental distinction remained. So here we are looking at, this is the sculpture from again Hoysaleshwar temple of Brahma and Sarasvati, Sarasvati as his consort here. Whereas these two large sculptures are from the Brahmajanalaya from Lakundi, Karnataka. And this is a temple, of course, Jain temple, one of the earliest Jain temples of Karnataka. And here, the temple is dedicated to Saraswati. The attributes they hold in their hands correspond to the Hindu iconography of Brahma and Saraswati pair. But at the bottom, you have some Jain iconographic features also. Right. So such was the blending at that time. And this, of course, is the same Gud Mandap where these two sculptures are located. Then we say, what is the status of Saraswati in Buddhism? Mahamayuri, as you are looking at one of the Ellora caves, Buddhist Ellora caves, is one of the names given to Saraswati in Buddhism. Then Vajra Sharda is another name of Saraswati and is depicted with a lotus and a book. She's described as having 3 eyes. As I had told you earlier, some Shaivite influences had also seeped in. So here you can see her with crescent moon on a crown, and she, of course, rests on white lotus. She is mentioned in Sadhana Mala, a collection of sadhana texts, which details the ritual instructions. Although, the text does not specify her asan, but normally, she is represented in this particular Bhadrasan, the posture of ease here. And the side figures are though mutilated here, but you can see one of them is holding a lotus in the right hand and a book in the left hand. And the third figure that I'm showing you is a 18th century Buddhist Tibetan artwork of Saraswati holding a veena from Eastern Tibet. So there is a continuity of venerating Saraswati in Buddhist tradition also. So the monastic religions like Jainism, Buddhism came about around the 6th century BC in response to the excessive ritualistic and sacrificial practices of the Vedic religion. But despite these differences, the doctrinal differences which are there between the two, there is some kind of mutuality and commonality in the worship of Saraswati that we just saw. And of course, the Vedic attributes of Veena, rosary, or Pusta, Kamandal, Kamal, etc., are common to the iconography of all the three religions. Okay. But in Jain religion, because it is uh, personified as the preaching of the Jina or the Jina-vani, with the manuscript as one of her main attributes, she is given a status almost at par to the Jina. In fact, because she's the vak or the teachings of the Jina, right? So this equality is very much evident from this image of Saraswati from Devgarh, where she's depicted with two Jinas on the same pedestal in the same compositional frame here. Okay. So she's actually supposed to be in the Dwadash Ang, the text, the 12 Anga text, she's described as uh, they are the 12 limbs of Shrutadevi or Saraswati, while the 14 Purvas are said to be her ornaments. Okay, and she also presides over all the 24 Shasan Devis. Okay, and known as Sarsai in the foremost, she's the foremost in the as a presiding deity. So this kind of also highlights the central role of scriptural knowledge in Jainism, distinguishing her from the Hindu tradition. Okay. This is a very beautiful image from Devgarh. Again, I'm showing you. There is the integration of Vedic river deity, Vagdevi, and Puranic aspect along with Jain Shrutadevi has resulted in the medieval Saraswati in both Hindu and Jain religious revered as the deity of all knowledge and arts. So the veneration of Saraswati, in fact, is manifest in several rituals and festivals. And most notable amongst the Digambars is, of course, the Shruta Panchami, and about the Shwetambars, they celebrate the Gyan Panchami, which honor the sanctity of knowledge and scriptures. And the Jain monks and scholars have historically sought Saraswati's blessings to attain mastery over sacred texts and dialectics. And here in this image, you will see clearly there are acharyas seated at the base, bowing down in veneration to Saraswati here. Okay. Then these are some of the very important Saraswati figures that were excavated in 1951 in Gujarat, known as the famous Akota Horde bronzes. And this is a rare collection of, there were 68 Jain images from the 6th to 12th centuries. And the Horde includes Gupta period bronzes, crucial for comparative studies of the Gupta art. And Akota was a major yeah, yeah, okay. Is this fine now? Yeah, okay. So I was talking about the Akota hordes from Gujarat. So it was the very famous Jain scholar U.P. Shah. In fact, he was the one who cataloged them. He bought them all and then ultimately gave them away to the University of Baroda. That's where they are housed right now. So these Saraswati figures, of course, exhibit a large head on a proportionately slender body, a somewhat short torso, full breasts. Right hip is subtly, thrust outward with a corresponding bend in the left knee. And this kind of imparts some kind of dynamism to the figure. And Yupisha also compared these figures with this Saraswati from the Nagpur Museum, of course, which is of a little later date, but a little bit more refined. Then, of course, these are, of course, the most exquisite Saraswati figures that we have from the medieval period. There are two identical figures. One is in National Museum, one is in Bikaner Museum. The four-armed goddess is depicted standing in Tribhanga, thrice flexed, posture on a lotus pedestal with a small mount, the swan at the base. You can see here at her feet. very serene in appearance. She's adorned beautifully with carved ornaments and a Karanda mukut on top, exuding divine grace and aesthetic elegance. In fact, there are two females on the side, which kind of emphasize, the goddess of art also. That's why there are two attending figures playing the veena. Yeah. The interesting part about the Bikaner Jubilee Museum is that the parikar or the frame also shows the 16 Vidya Devi images which are there, including the Aprati Chakra, Vajrankusha, Kali, Rohini, etc. So presence of these figures suggests that Sarasvati was envisioned as the supreme deity presiding over all on all the Mahavidyas also, or the great parts. And additionally, I should tell you this, that how you identify if it is the Saraswati figure is affiliated to the Jain tradition or a Vedic tradition, you will, by and large, you will find the image of a Jina on the head or the coffer of Saraswati, whichever figure that you see. So that way you can easily distinguish her in that sense. Then there is this almost similar to these earlier two images. This is at the Ladnu Museum, in Ladnu local temple, it is there. And interestingly, here you have the Jina images also here on the side stele here, you can see here. And there is an Arahadika. And these are the 16 Mahavidyas on the other side. And of course, in the center, you have the Saraswati figure. And from the inscriptions, we know that this is the donor, and she's, standing in veneration to in Namaskar posture for the Saraswati as well as the Tirthankaras and the Vidya Devis. Okay. Then these are again two more very interesting figures. One is from National Museum. This is from Fatehpur Sikri. In fact, at the time of the excavation of a temple, it was an accidental find, and that's why these two, these forearms are broken because it was just not possible to bring it out in its totality. However, and when it was brought out, it was totally mutilated, and there was a lot of work that was done on this. And again, she stands in a contrapposto stance and heavily ornamented. These are some of the, unfortunately, beautiful Saraswati sculptures that are in some of the foreign museums. This one is from LA County Museum, Birmingham Museum, then British Museum. This is also British Museum. So all between 10th and 12th century medieval, and this was the kind of iconography. And in fact, it is said that the LA Museum, Saraswati was kind of reinstalled because the earlier Saraswati figure had kind of disappeared, or kind of, it was damaged rather. And of course, the story about the British Museum Saraswati is that there was a raid in the Bhojshala in the central India, Madhya Pradesh, established by, the Raja Bhoj, who was there. And in 1886, it is believed that when East India Company conquered Malwa, the Bhojshala was totally destroyed, and many monuments and temples were raided. And Lord Curzon is said to have looted this particular Saraswati from the temple. And this is, of course, a bronze again from British Museum. And you can see the iconography is almost identical, although this is two-armed, which is, again, a very rare sculpture in a later date. Yeah. Then we are looking at some of the acharyas and some inscriptions here. Devgarh, it is known for its remarkable group of temples. Devgarh is in MP, of course, was not just a site of artistic and religious significance with many, many Saraswati images, but also it was a flourishing center of knowledge and Saraswat power. The region's vibrant intellectual and spiritual traditions are well documented through more than 400 inscriptions found within the temple complex. So these inscriptions, many of which are dated, uh, which is again an exceptional rarity in Indian art history. They record the names of Tirthankaras, monks, acharyas, bhattaraks, donors, goddesses, sculptors, ruling dynasties, etc., etc. So they provide in that sense an unparalleled resource for understanding the scholarly, artistic, and religious heritage of Jainism in medieval India. So, in fact, and they also talk about the different dynasties that ruled the region, starting with King Bhoj of Kannauj, then Gurjar Pratiharas, Chandelas, and then eventually the Bundelas, right? And this is one of the sculptures of the Acharya that was actually excavated, right? And this is the inscription of the it is a dated inscription of Samvat 919 or 919, which talks about in fact, different acharyas, the lineages, the Kanak Chandradev, Lakshmi Chandradev, along with their disciples, etc. They are all inscribed. So we get to learn a lot about the 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 worship of Saraswati. It was a learning center because there are many sculptures of Saraswati also that we have found from this place. Okay. Then we come to the famous temple of Parshvanath at Khajuraho. Saraswati was accorded a prominent position. She's featured on the Adhishtan or the basal moldings of the mandap in the Parshvanath temple, dated, of course, around the 10th century. And also she appears frequently on door lintels also. In fact, there are almost total 8 representations of Saraswati where she's depicted with 6 arms. And all that, in fact, figures possess 4 arms carrying various attributes which are similar to what you're looking on the screen. The manuscript, the lotus, the kamandalu, the vinaya. You can see the middle shaft of the vinaya. Of course, the 2 sides of the the resonators have kind of been mutilated. She's invariably sitting in Lalitasana here. Okay. And of course, you can see the 2 fly whisk bearers on the 2 sides. There are Jina images here too. You can clearly see here. So, which kind of shows you that it has Jain affiliation here. Okay. Then we come to, that was, of course, the Digambar. This is again belonging to the Digambar tradition. Several sculptures from different locations in Karnataka provide insights into the power aspect of Saraswati. And 3 such examples dated to 11th, 12th century have been identified from Panchkuta Vasadi at Humcha, Shimoga, Shantinath Vasadi at Jinanathpura, and the Adinath temple at Helebidu. In all these instances, Saraswati is depicted seated in Dhyana Mudra without a Vahana, and some of the attributes that you see here are little different. You can see a gourd here, a noose, and so sometimes you will also see these weapons where she's also shown in a malevolent form also, along with the pustak and the veena and the kamandalu, etc. So here you see the facial features suggest an expression of power conveyed through large open eyes and parted lips, although, they are, I would say slightly swollen nose, but in all, very peaceful and pleasing appearance. Okay, next. Let's look at some of the Shwetambar temples. Various Jain texts, refer to Saraswati by different names. Sharda, Shrutadevi, Bharati, Bhasha, Vakdevta, Vani, Brahmi, etc., etc. So the representation of Saraswati appears to suggest her role as the goddess of fine arts. The manifestation of her power is depicted in this Brahmika ceiling. Brahmika is the aisle ceiling of a temple, which is a typical feature of a Jain Shwetambar temple, where all along the periphery, there are minor shrines, and this particular sculpture you find on the ceiling of that aisle, or we call it a Brahmika. She's 16-armed goddess. Sorry. Here she's, of course, four-armed. And what is important about this is a Vimal Vasahi temple at Dilwara. This is the Rangamandaps, okay. And just next to the Rangamandap, the ceiling on the aisle, all right. Of course, the Varad Mudra is there, Akshmal is there, Kamandalu, Pustak, the lotus, all this is fine. But there are two figures which we can find on the two sides here. And who are these two figures? So there is an inscription also. These figures, according to which the bearded figure that you see on her right side is the probably Loina, possibly the chief sculptor, while the figure to her left, holding a measuring rod, is likely to be the chief architect, Kela. And because of this reason, also, this sculpture is very, very important. Yeah. So this representation, of course, is 12-armed, Varad Mudra, Conch, etc. Now you're seeing many, many other attributes also. A god is there, Abhayaksha, all that is there. And the goddess is flanked again by 6 armed male dancing figures on each side, suggesting her supreme command over the arts and knowledge. Okay. Now we'll come to, from Sarasvati, I will talk a little bit about the Vidya Devis. So the many concepts that are found in Jain iconography, none is as original as that of the Vidya Devis, or the goddesses of learning. In fact, with their number expanding to 48,000, such is, significantly astonishing number. So while such an enormous figure is unlikely to reflect actual practice, and they are not being, venerated all 48,000, it highlights also the growing prominence of these goddesses within Jain belief. Okay, so out of these, there are 16 Mahavidyas. They are revered as the guardians of the arts and sciences, and their veneration is, believed to bestow wisdom upon the devotees. And they are all, of course, female divinities. And the earliest known Vidya Devis are depicted at the ocean. It's a small temple town near Jodhpur. And that's where it, totally follows the iconography details that are prescribed in the Jain text. And what I'm showing you here is a ceiling panel again from the Brahmika ceiling, or the aisle ceiling, from Shantina temple at Kumbharia. So here, of course, normally you will find Vidya Devis on the ceiling panel surrounding the Tirthankar seated in the center. And here, instead of standing, they are all seated here. And it is said that this panel is, again, very important for the study of the iconography of Vidya Devi. Then this is, of course, a very, very beautiful panel from Dilwara, again, Vimal Vasai temple I'm showing you. And this is you can recognize it by the pendentive lotus that's there in the center here. The Vidya Devis are now here, you can see, arranged here radially all along the, the central pendant in a circular formation, radiating from the center of the dome of the Rangamandap. This is not the aisle ceiling, but it's the main Rangamandap inside the main temple, where this is the depiction. And it kind of symbolizes the dissemination of wisdom in all directions. And each Vidya Devi is depicted with her distinct attributes, intricately sculpted to reflect her unique iconography, and also role in whatever is her role in the Jain thought. The carvings are, of course, needless to say, they exhibit the remarkable craftsmanship of the Solanki era artisans, with elaborate detailing in the drapery, ornaments, and, of course, the serene expressions of the goddess. the very, very delicate yet grand style of the sculpture, characterized by its symmetry, the rhythmic flow, reflects the artistic brilliance of the Maru Gurjar architecture. And these divine figures are not merely decorative, but serve as a, I will say, spiritual focal point, emphasizing the Jain reverence for learning and enlightenment. Then, of course, there are some more Vidya Devi figures from the same temple I'm trying to show you here. Okay. So the cult of the 16 Mahavidyas is also popular among Hindus and sometimes also appears in Buddhist tradition. Mahavidyas such as Kali, Mahakali, Gauri, Chakreshwari have distinctly Vedic affiliations, while Vajrashrankhala, Vajrankusha point towards Buddhism. In fact, Chakreshwari Yakshi, also one of the 16 Mahavidyas known as Aprati Chakra, you are seeing on the screen, has Garud as her mount and is associated with Vishnu in the Hindu tradition. She is multi-armed and holds a chakra in most of her hands, along with her other attributes like the mace, bow, arrow, a sword, shankha, etc., while some other arms are holding Varad Mudra, etc. Okay. Now I'll show you some paintings, Jain paintings, where we have the depiction of Sarasvati. Jain paintings, we all know, belong to the Western Indian school of paintings, also known as the Gujarati paintings. And in all the Jain illustrated paintings, depictions of Saraswati often functions as the invocation to the goddess of learning, and mostly present on the first page of the manuscript, or the first folio rather, because earlier it was not made on paper. Earlier there were folios made on palm leaf. So the characteristics of Jain paintings, of course, the 3/4 profile, the angularity, the pointed nose, the further eye, which kind of projects beyond the cheek, broad shoulders, attenuated waist like a lion, flat colors, there is almost divorced from any kind of perspective, very linear presentation, okay? And also the textiles which are there in these paintings, they showcase the highly developed indigenous weaving, dyeing, and block printing industry of Gujarat and Rajasthan of that time, okay? So in fact, from 2nd to 8th century, I would say, Jainism spread widely in these areas, and there were a lot of donations that came to the Jain places of worship. The Bhattarakas were the ones who were responsible for managing these donations. So first of all, making of the sculptures. Can hello, yeah, okay. So making of the sculptures, then donation towards making of temples, and also making of the manuscripts. It was considered a very, very pious act, never undertaken for personal whims and fancies, but it was considered as the Shastradan, and one would earn religious merit. And because of this, there were many, many. So in fact, it is only in Jain tradition, and primarily also in Shwetambar Jain tradition, that we have innumerable Jain manuscripts, and this we can totally owe to the institution of Jain Bhandars, or the libraries where they are being stored, and even till today we can get access to them and study them. Okay, so here I've shown you two manuscript folios. This is from a Digambar manuscript of Dhaval. Dhaval is the commentary on Shatkhandagam, which is the earliest Digambar text. And this is the palm leaf folio from Kalp Sutra, which again is a Shwetambar text, and it talks about the life stories of the Tirthankars. But these are the initial folios. Okay, as I said, inside the other folios, you will find the life stories, but initial folios will be these. Then this, of course, is a very loose folio that we have from Jaisalmer Bhandar here. she's four-armed, holding the kartal, some kind of music in upper hands, while by the lower left hand, she strings a veena, carried by lower right hand. She's seated in Padmasana here, very, very different, posture as compared to what we saw earlier. And of course, you can see the Hamsa Vahan on her left hand, and which is represented as her Vahan, her vehicle. And of course, the softness of the features and the delicate movements of the limbs impart a lot of grace and poise to this figure. So the evidence from the colophon, when I say colophon, it is the last folio of any manuscript. It suggests that these kind of donations and the support came from very wealthy Jain laity, principally merchants who prospered from the trade. I just spoke about the textile trade and likewise the woodcraft, etc. And this kind of trade that flowed through Gujarat from the coastal ports, the Lothal being the most ancient Gujarat port we have from Indus Valley civilization, and to of course, the hinterlands of inside the villages and the smaller towns of India. Okay. It is also very important to know that these Jain Bhandars and the libraries, of course, the zeal to acquire texts reached such great proportion that they collected texts on not only on Jain religion, but on other religions, other secular subjects, mathematics, astronomy, etc., even romantic novels. Yeah, that I will show you some of them maybe. Then these are two folios from Adi Puran Mahakavya, originally written by Jin Sen in Sanskrit. But this is the copy of Acharya Pushpadant in the 10th century, who translated into Upbranch language in Jainagari script. And here this is written in Upbranch. And this is, of course, the Hindi translation that I'm showing you here. So this, again, the first folio you are looking at here. So sometimes what happens, the first folio also shows the Namukar mantra here. You can clearly read here on the screen, Namo Arihantanam, Siddhanam, etc. And this is the second folio. Do you see the number here? And this is where you have the depiction of Sarasvati here. Okay. Now I spoke about the typical characteristics of the Jain manuscript paintings. So here you can see such broad shoulders which are shown for Saraswati. And it is almost, you can mistake for a male unless and until you have these two, breasts, which are these swollen, overlapping breasts that you see. And this is a typical feature, that the distinction between the male and the female sometimes become very, difficult to distinguish between the two. Yeah. Okay. Then again, I'm going to show you, these are some of the Vidya Devi paintings, which are done on some palm leaf folios and wooden book covers also, which is, of course, again, a very unique concept. So this is a very rare palm leaf manuscript of Ogha Niryukti, which contains representations of 19 goddesses, including the 16 Vidya Devis, the Yaksha, Kapadin, Brahmashanti, with their names also inscribed on it. So these miniatures, of course, are of great importance for the study of the iconography in the Jain, Mantra Shastras, as these are their earliest, representation in painting. We saw, on the ceiling of the Vimal Vasahi temple at Delwara, their figures are carved in marble. But in painting, their representations are much, much clearer. And besides their iconographical importance, the miniatures have also preserved for us the details of the contemporary costumes and textiles of both of men and women. Of course, you can see the linear concept of drawing. There is, very little attempt at color modeling, the pointed treatment of the nose, the chin, the slight protrusion of the further eye that you see here into space are, of course, some of the characteristics of Jain paintings visible here. This is another, so these are the wooden patlis or the wooden covers in between which the palm leaf folios were secured, and they were tied with a thread around them. So this is a rare collection of wooden covers, manuscript from Jaisalmer Gyan Bhandar. And you can see these are all labeled. And also you can see by looking at their attributes, not all of them are in their benevolent form. Some of them are also holding swords, etc., shields, khadag. These kind of weapons are also there. And there are two Shravikas, whose names are also inscribed on top. Devashri Shravika and what is the other name is Padmini. They are inscribed in Devanagari on the panels. Okay, so these are three Jain texts I'm showing you with illustration of Saraswati of a much later period. If you look at this, this is 18th, 19th century. Okay, then this again is late 15th century. Okay. So this is, of course, Abhidhan Chintamani text, which was written by Hemchandracharya. And here you have the figure of Saraswati depicted here. Interestingly, Leelavati is a mathematical treatise, okay? But again, as I said, the quest for knowledge or the zeal for acquiring these texts, whether they were religious or not, but as long as they were imparting some kind of knowledge. So this is the Leelavati text on mathematics, right? So here you will see quite, this is early, but this here it is much later, 18th, 19th century. So a lot of Mughal influence has, seeped into the Jain paintings. The 3/4 profile here has given way to complete profile. There is no further eye here. There is no, that angularity or the pointedness of the features that we see in this painting. And look at the costumes. The jamas, pajamas have made their appearance here in place of the dhoti. Okay. So, and this most important I want to point out is this is a romantic folk story, Madhavnal Kam Kandala, of a man and a woman, which was actually made very, very popular by the Jain, acharyas. And here also, if you read the, I think I've put Kushal Labh Upadhyay, the Shwetambar Jain Murti Pujak has kind of written this particular copy of Madhavnal Kamakandala. So they were actually not averse to writing these texts also. And it is important for us to know the best of romantic stories, the rasas, the fagus have been written by the Jain scholars. But ultimately, in the end, they always, steer the audience or the readers towards the Jain values of life, and they want to teach them that the asceticism in the end is the best tool to attain moksha. Okay. Then this is a very rare, the oldest known embroidered textile from Gujarat, dating to 15th, 16th century, where it is showing, I mean, it's done on cotton, embroidered with colored silk and kusha grass, which is again very sacred to Jains. On a the fabric is cotton. This particular one is you can find at the Calico Museum. This is the depiction of 16 Vidya Devis, and these are kind of the puthiyas which are hung at the behind when the acharyas or the upadhyayas are engaged in some kind of discourse here. Then this is a very famous Saraswati Pat of the late 15th century from National Museum. Yeah, there are, you can see very, very vibrant, bright colors. You can see divided into 9 compartments. Saraswati is seated in Padmasan. She wears a patola dhoti, if you look at it very, very carefully. Yeah, a thin scarf. And of course, there are these 2 chauri bearers or the fly whisk bearers, which are actually, here you can see they are also holding 2 parrots. The parrots are, they signify passion. And needless to say, there is a Jain Acharya who's kind of showing them the way to stay away from these kind of passions. And you can see a large swan here placed at the base. So look at these dancers in these other compartments here. very, very lively depiction of these female musicians and dancers that I will say. And they have great rhythm, and their long tasseled hair that you see here move in harmony with their bodies and clothes. Okay. And yeah, I will talk a little bit about the Saraswati in Jain tantric tradition also. In fact, Jain literature also references Saraswati's role in tantric practices. There are texts or works like Bharti Kalp, Saraswat Kalp, Siddh Saraswat serves describe her worship in tantric rites also. And there are legendary accounts of Saraswati's intervention in debates. In fact, it's a recurring motif in Jain Prabandhas. Prabandhas are the medieval narrative poetry. Okay. And it's said that, many Jain acharyas, Bappa Bhatti Suri, Hemchandracharya, etc., they sought, the blessings of Saraswati, or they wanted to acquire Saraswat power in addition to other mystical abilities in order to defeat the other person in Shastrarth or some kind of a debate, etc., etc. Okay. So it is said that they successfully attained Saraswati's favor by meditating on Saraswati Yantra or Saraswati Yantra through yogic practices. So I will probably show you some tantric patas also. My screen is, I'm going to wait. My screen is not moving. Huh? Just a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought I should stop share and share again. Can you help me do that? You can disallow my screen sharing and allow me again, probably. Will that
Oh,
be of any use? I'm not able to
no.
move my screen. Okay. Probably now I will share again. Sharing is not turned on. Okay, you need to share, start again.
Yeah, yeah, ma'am. It's now
You've
turned on.
done it.
You may try.
Okay. Yeah, now it's there. Great. Yes, now we have it here. Okay, so this is a, of course, it's a Suri mantra diagram, mystic diagram. So first, let me speak a little bit about the Saraswati Yantra and the ritual worship. So Tantric Jain works provide details of intricate yantras or the mystical diagrams used for the sadhana or the spiritual practice of Saraswati. The Saraswat Yantra Puja describes a ritual mandal where several divine figures are worshipped, including the 16 Vidya Devis, the Ashtadikpals, the Matrikas, the Ashtapairavas, etc. So this system kind of integrates Saraswati into a broader tantric framework where she is venerated alongside other deities in Jain pantheon. The iconographic representation of Saraswati in Jain tantric texts show her as depicted as 2 and 4-armed, as well as multi-armed with 6, 8, or even 16 arms, holding additional symbols such as Ankush, Shul, Pash, etc. in a malevolent form. So this is, of course, the Suri mantra. So you can see the circles and the squares here. It also kind of these circles and the squares and the seed syllables here, they aim at calming the mind and fostering detachment from worldly chaos. And in fact, while the similar diagrams or the mandalas in Buddhists, in fact, they do not lay as much emphasis on the mantras or the seed syllables, where imagery kind of dominates. But here, the seed syllables and the words are equally important. Okay, so this is a 17th century Suri mantra, which kind of also shows some kind of Mughal influence with its floral motifs and naturalistic details, okay, which has kind of diverged from the Western Indian style of painting. So here in the center, you have a pair of figures sitting with two Shwetambar monks here. There are syllables here. The 24 jinas are there in the outer circle, and then there are various divinities. And here we have a depiction of Sarasvati here, okay, including Saraswati here, along with other. And the mystical syllables or the seed syllables, as we call them, the Bij mantra, rim, chrome, brim, etc., you find inscribed here. Then this is another very beautiful Suri mantra only, intricately decorated with numerous figures covering the entire surface. And here you have a beautiful figure of Saraswati again. At the center, you have the Gautam Swami is depicted. So many people, mistake this figure for a figure of Tirthankar, but it is not. Why? Because we all know from the iconography about Tirthankars, they are always shown in only two stances or positions, either standing in Kayotsarga or seated in Padmasana in meditation. So this is a typical iconography of Gautam Swami, the foremost disciple of Mahavir. Okay. So Suri mantra is, in fact, it is not for a commoner. It is actually when there is a kind of elevation or promotion of a lower, rank of upadhyaya or acharya, and that's when he's allowed to meditate on such kind of patas. Okay. So the pursuit of Saraswati's blessings often involved these kind of mantra sadhanas or the spiritual practice, particularly through Saraswat mantra, a mystical formula. No. So in fact, Hemchandracharya, the very famous Jain, scholar, poet, I mean, many, he wears many hats of medieval period. In fact, he openly acknowledges his faith in such practices. And Jain literature also narrates how Jain scholars journeyed to Brahmadesh, which was, of course, Kashmir, we know it as, to seek the favor of goddess Brahmi, an alternate name for Saraswati. And this practice aimed at ensuring their success in philosophical debates against the rival scholars. Okay. So among the most memorable Jain symbol is the Sthapnacharya. This is what I'm talking about, the stand for holy scriptures, which a Jain monk keeps before him while he's giving a discourse. This is also an object of veneration here. It not only symbolizes the presence and reverence for one's teacher, but also the respect Jains show for their holy scriptures. Why I'm showing you this? Because it then also kind of brings in a perspective as to how holy or how sacred or how much respect Saraswati as Jina-vani must be, how much of it must be accorded to the Devi Saraswati, who's the personification of Jina-vani in Jain religion. So to conclude, I will say as Jain art matured, Saraswati's iconography became increasingly intricate, starting from cave temples, we saw some, and then medieval Jain temples such as those at Mount Abu, Taranga, Shatrunjay, etc., Khajuraho, Karnataka temples. Exquisite, examples, of course, we saw of 11th century and 12th century Saraswati from Pallu, Bikaner, etc. Such ornate jewelry she was wearing, accompanied by attendants. And then we saw some of the miniature paintings, the vastra-patas, which brought to life the vibrant colors and the delicate lines. So in these artistic renderings reflect her elevated status within Jain spiritual and cultural context as the Jina-vani or the preachings of the Jina. With this, I'm going to stop my presentation and although we do not have much time for question answers, but I'll be happy to take one or two. Yeah. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much, Dr. Jain. You spoke beautifully and so eloquently. और सचमुच इतना अच्छा बोली कि मेरे ख्याल क्वेश्चंस के कुछ आपने छोड़े ही नहीं गुंजाइश. आपने
No,
जमीन ही नहीं छोड़ी कि क्वेश्चन क्या पूछे हैं. सारे सवालों का जवाब आपने स्वयं दे दिया. फिर भी I request all our participants, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
yes. And I can also put my email in the chat. If not now, later also you can email me and ask.
Yes, please. That will be perfect.
Yeah, let me put my...
Free to ask any questions. Since the scholar is here, आप पूछ सकते हैं. And otherwise,
I have a question. I have a
Yes.
question.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Have you visited all these places which you have explained?
Yes, yes, that's the beauty. Yeah, that's why I love it. I'm very passionate about my subject. Yes, yeah. Yes.
And where did you get so much history? Have you read some scriptures, or you got it from the local people?
I think it is a combination of all. You need to read the text and talk to the local people, the Bhattaraks, etc. Yeah, that's how you can kind of verify what the texts are saying and what is the prevailing practice, which is whether it is prevalent now or it has disappeared. So all these are part of the research work that you do. And I'm also proud to say that this book, Jain, about Sarasvati, is it has been published by the publisher who is with us, Manish Bhai, Manish Modi ji. Please tell us something about Hindi Granth Karyalay, because I mean, it is a legacy of more than 100 years old publishing house that he's running today in Bombay. Yes, please tell us something about it.
Thank you so much. Hindi Granth Karyalay was started by my great-grandfather, Pandit Nathuram Premi. In 1905, he started Jain Granth Ratnakar, and in 1912, he started Hindi Granth Ratnakar Karyalay, which we now know as Hindi Granth Karyalay. So Jain Granth Ratnakar was meant to publish Jain books, and Hindi Granth Ratnakar Karyalay was meant to publish English and Bengali books and general books and Urdu books, general books in Hindi. And the first book that he published was a book called Swadhinta, which is an English Hindi translation of John Stuart Mill's On Liberty. And it's one of the most important texts because it talks about egalitarianism. And it's one of those fundamental texts that inspired people from Dadabhai Nauroji to other freedom fighters to fight for India's freedom struggle. So Premiji wanted that this book should be read by the masses of India, because the whole idea of equality and egalitarianism is, let's be honest, it is a Western import that came into India with Westernization and with Raja Ram Mohan Roy's emphasis on Western education. Had it not been for this emphasis on Western education, we would perhaps still be in the doldrums of the caste system, ravaged by all the horrific circumstances that it created. And today, when we have women and disenfranchised people at the forefront in India, we can truly say that we're a secular democratic republic where every single citizen of India has the power to vote and express himself. This is thanks to the spirit of egalitarianism that pervades the Constitution of India, and it's books like On Liberty by John Stuart Mill that shaped and fashioned the thought process of people like Mahatma Gandhi, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and all of these champions and stalwarts of India. So that was a very, very important work. Other than that, he published a large chunk of Sharat Babu. The entire works of Shachan Chattopadhyay were published by us. The Granthalaya is in Bombay. Hirabag Dharmashala, CP Tank Circle, Bombay 4. And other than Sharat Babu, we published Rabindra Babu and Bankim Babu. We first published the most important novel of Munshi Premchand, that's Godan. And we published a bunch of other books. Till 1960, we were focusing entirely on Hindi and Bengali. I joined the business after I came back to India in 1999, and I shifted the focus to Jainism. So now, although the name is Hindi Granth Karyalay, we focus on Jainism and Prakrit. I mean, we publish other books also. I published books on yoga, This year I'm publishing 5 books on yoga, but 3 of them are on Jain yoga. And yeah, it's my focus is so much on Jainism that invariably we focus on Jainism. So we have a little bit of a tunnel vision now, but hopefully we've done Julia Hegewald on Jain art, now with you on Jain art, and hopefully we'll do more works on Jain art as well. So, okay, then one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is this explained very beautifully in a very nuanced manner, this expansion of Saraswati as a river goddess on one side and the Jain personification of Saraswati as a Jina-vani. So, did you find anywhere any traces that the two come together? Or is it only a modern construct in the past 500 years that we treat them as one person?
Yeah, it is actually, it is the Jain goddess as Jina-vani, the Rigvedic, river, and also Puranic concept as the deity of all arts. In fact, so by the time we reach the medieval times, they all come together to, whatever that we see today from medieval time, 10th, 11th century, or even earlier.
So this amalgamation is relatively recent.
Of these
relatively
three, yes.
recent.
Very, very, yeah. Yes.
Because now I see Shwetambar Murti Pujak Acharyas, when they hold, Jain Gyan Shivers and Dhyan Shivers, they put a picture, an idol of Saraswati.
Yes, yes.
Of course, not knowing the distinctions, they put up an idol of the Hindu Saraswati. But it's
Yes.
interesting. I'm like, why not have a Tirthankaras Pratimaji? So, no, but Saraswati symbolifies knowledge.
So, I showed you 2 pictures from 2 different temples. Yeah. And of course, in Delhi, close to my house. So it's a beautiful enclosure where they have kept the scriptures, and they are offering the arg to Jina-vani. And another temple where same scriptures are there, and they're offering the arg to Saraswati. So it is, there is no difference even today in modern Jain temples also. And I'm talking about Digambar temples. Yeah.
Yeah. The Shwetambar temples, there's a more distinct, they don't have the Shrutaskandha. They have the Saraswati Mata, the image of the Hindu image that they share.
Yeah.
And there's always often an alcove.
So it is also, we all know that the Digambars have always claimed to be the Mool Sangha, as part of that. And Shwetambars have been, more accommodating in that sense. And that's also one of the reasons that we have so many Shwetambar texts, the temples also, because they went along, accommodating and assimilating many Hindu sanskars or the practices, etc., into Jainism. And that is also one of the reasons. Like Acharya Hemchandra Acharya.
Yeah.
He himself,
there was a lot of syncretism. That's true.
Allowed for a lot of these kind of, influences to seep in. And knowingly, he kind of accepted those and propagated those just to be, so that there's also a plus side to it, because there is then certain harmony in the society. All right. There is no rivalry as such when there is this kind of syncretism is there. Yeah.
That's true. Actually, it's very interesting the way Hemchandra Acharya could actually work with 2 Hindu kings and ensure that, if nothing else, Gujarat, with the largest coastline in India, remains a strongly vegetarian state. It's an enduring impact of Hemchandra Acharya's legacy.
Absolutely.
Because, every coastline you have people who eat fish. And Gujarat is a largely vegetarian state. This is thanks to the blessings of Acharya Hemchandra.
Absolutely.
So there is something to be said for the syncretism, of course. And it is somehow symbolic of our society, because a movie like Amar Akbar Anthony could be a super hit where he had one son who was a Muslim, one was a Hindu, one was a Christian. It's somehow there in our roots, in our DNA, that we work with other people, we accommodate other people, and we enrich ourselves by doing so.
Absolutely. And that is the call of the day today. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I'm seeing another question by Anchit Jain. Anchit, would you want to ask your question now?
Anchit, are you there? Amazing presentation as always. I have
Thank
a
you.
small query, and at the Gyaraspur temple, at the lintel, there are two images of Saraswati, one holding the Shastra, the other is holding Veena, right? So, how do you see these kind of parallel iconographies?
Yeah, this you will find at all places. As I have said, Saraswati can be, depicted in many, many of her forms, sometimes two-armed, four-armed, six-armed, 16-armed also, and also the various attributes she holds. So these are some of the, she presides over these kind of powers, all right? And also in the same temple, you can have two sculptures having different attributes. That's very, very common in Indian art. Very, very common, I would say that. At one point, probably her pustak attribute is, given more importance, and on the other side, probably her artistic aspect is, given, yeah, more weightage.
Ma'am, can I ask this question again? In the sense, um, when we look at when she's holding scriptures in one of her hand, that's embodiment of the Shrut Parampara, right? Now we know that there is a kind of perhaps a Puranic influence in the way she's holding Veena in some of her iconographies. But how are Jain perceiving this kind of representation? Now at Dilwara, you have at many sites you have fused images where she's also holding Veena in one hand and Astaras and the text on the other hand. But at sites like Gyaraspur, where you have two distinct iconographies, one is holding a text, other is holding Veena. Now, when she is holding Veena in her hand, right now, how we explain this kind of thing? How or say how can this be explained from Jain principles?
See, the Gyaraspur Saraswati is from the medieval period, right?
Yeah, roughly ninth century, yes.
Yes, it's absolutely peak of the medieval period. So that's what I have told, that uh, it was already assimilated in the Jain, iconography, the iconography of Saraswati by this time. Already Saraswati was holding a pustak, a veena, kamandalu, kamal. Earlier, we saw the Kushan period Saraswati. What was she holding? A pustak and akshmal. That's all, right? But it was only, slowly, because of the other societal and the religious influences which were there. That's how we came to this final medieval Saraswati, where the Veena is also there, as Manish Bhai just now said, that the Shwetambar, any discourse, they will place the image of Saraswati with a Veena. As exactly as per how the Brahminic or the Vedic religion, how you depict Saraswati. Just maybe there will be a Jina image on her coffer or a head. That's how you will distinguish. Otherwise, there is practically no difference there. Yeah,
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
thank you. Yeah. Shall we
Good
conclude
evening.
this session? Yeah.
Good evening, ma'am.
I would like to ask, is that Deepankar?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
Hi, Deepankar. I'll answer your question. There are several books on Jainism in Bengali. Why don't you message me later on? I'll give you a list of Jain books in Bengali. Is that fine?
Okay, okay. Here I
Okay.
have a query, ma'am. Ma'am, I want to know that generally Jainism treat as known as a atheistic religion, but there is a not only Saraswati, there is a numerous god and goddess. So, what is the Jain standpoint about it?
Okay. Very interesting that you asked this question. So, as you said, that Jain religion is considered to be an atheist religion. Is that what did I hear it right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay.
Generally, Jainism known as a
Yeah,
atheistic
yeah.
religion.
So why is it called atheist? Because I think I've just touched upon this, that there is no creator deity or God in Jainism.
Yes.
No. So that is the reason. we feel the Jain religion says that, I mean, we venerate 24 Tirthankars. They are not the creator deities. They were born like you and me. They were human beings. I know. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So that is the, I mean, there is a lot more to it, but in nutshell, I can just, tell you this right now. Yeah.
Yes, that's a pretty good answer. I think a little bit running out of time. Can I ask Ocean for a vote of thanks?
Yeah.
Thank you, all the participants. And it's so kind of you, Pavanji, to give such beautiful answers. And it was a lovely presentation. Sari baatein. I mean, honestly, you did not leave any scope for questions. हमने सबने सोचा था कुछ क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे. We must look very intelligent. We must look smart in front of the speaker, but you answered everything, honestly. So, Ocean, over to you now.
Thank you very much, Manish ji, for this opportunity of presenting the formal vote of thanks. In fact, I would like to say that through my experience with ma'am, that the lectures that she has delivered for our certificate course in Jain Art and Archaeology at Deccan College, and the lectures that she has been delivering throughout in online and the other mediums, I have understood that ma'am is a hardcore teacher, and the way she teaches and the way she incorporates every complex idea into a very simplistic explanation that even a commoner would understand, and not just understand, but that person would become enthusiastic and interested in Jain studies. So that's the biggest contribution any scholar can actually do to academia, bringing commoners into the field of academics. So thank you so much, ma'am, for that. We are very grateful for your patience, time, and the knowledge that you have shared with us today, starting from the antiquity of Sarasvati in Jainism and comparing it with the contemporary religious traditions. You went on to see its continuity in the present living day tradition of the Jains in both the sects, Shvetambars and the Digambars. I'm also thankful to the representative of Hindi Granth Karyalay, Manish Modi sir, for this wonderful coordination of this particular session. I'm also thankful to the scholars that joined in today. Dr. Renuka Porwal ma'am, Dr. Manisha Puranik ma'am, Yifan Singh Raja from Ghent University, and Banerjee sir and Dr. Shrikant Ganveer sir, who joined in today for listening to ma'am's lecture, and all the other participants for this active participation. And we are also thankful to the person who conceptualized this idea of ancient Jainism, Saurabh Jain, and Soumya Saxena for the technical support. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you in the next session. Saurabh has already dropped in the links to joining our WhatsApp group, our YouTube channel, our Instagram page, and also Dr. Pawanjan ma'am has dropped her email ID. So those whose questions could not be taken today, kindly mail her the questions, and I'm very sure that she'll be very happy to answer your questions within no time. Thank you so much, everyone, again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Jai Jinesh.